I don't want to be forgotten. My worst fear is that in 100 years, my name won't mean anything to anyone. That in 200 years, it will be as if I never existed. The thought that it will all end up meaning nothing plagues me at night, rattling my brain, keeping me awake, forcing me to busy myself in a futile attempt to escape it. This sentiment is what I'll explore in this episode of Life Fulfilled, the podcast centering around philosophy and psychology, brought to you from the eyes of an adolescent. My name is Alina, and welcome to the beginning of the rest of your life. Has talent disappeared? There seems to be a lack of Mozarts and Shakespeares and Da Vinci's in the modern day, artists who transform their fields. But how come? Is it because genius is overlooked? Because talent only seems to gain recognition after these types pass? Or is it because of something else? Something having to do with quick fame over quality work? Some deep-rooted fear of living without acknowledgement? Could it be the fear of being forgotten? Now, this runs contrary to the fame and applause given to the artists listed above. However, a lot of impactful people never did gain recognition during their lifetime. For example, Emily Dickinson, now considered a literary genius and revered as a poet, was not publicly recognized when she was alive. She published around 10 poems out of nearly 1,800, and these poems never gained public success. Similar is the case of Franz Kafka. His works are widely recognized globally and even inspired their own word, Kafkaesque, describing a situation inherent with surreal misery. However, Kafka's works had poor reception during his lifetime. This convinced him that his works were bad, and he even told his friend to burn his writing upon his death. Obviously, this friend did not. Regardless, Kafka believed that it was better to be forgotten, not knowing that his works would go on to inspire millions. He did not do it to be remembered. In fact, that was never a part of his plan. Maybe the greats never did it to be recognized. They never did it for fame. They did it because they felt the internal calling to act. In other words, the most talented people to have ever have lived may have believed that they'd be forgotten. Yet, they wrote anyway. They composed anyway. They created anyway. This desire to produce and contribute came from within them, as they did it even when they thought there was no recognition to gain. It's important to note that the chances of being remembered in 200 years, let alone 500, are slim. There are minimal household names out of the trillions of people to have lived, and it is hard to take the world by storm. So you should not do it if it's for fame. It's unlikely to ever happen. In fact, in his poem, So You Want to Be a Writer, Charles Bukowski explains this, advising, if it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you have to sit for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter searching for words, don't do it. If you're looking for money or fame, don't do it. Unless it comes out of your soul bursting like a rocket, unless being still will drive you to madness or suicide or murder, don't do it. Since success and generational impact is so unlikely, the motivating factor behind taking on the process of creation should be the insatiable hunger to produce. Not fame, not success, not to look impressive. The intention that you set for an action matters. It is extremely difficult to be remembered or even recognized during your lifetime. So, instead of being motivated by external validation or material success, your calling should burst out of you unrestrained and without expectation as light emanates from the sun. If anything, Bukowski's words should remind you that greatness does not stem from a desire to be seen as great. Instead, it's a pull in the direction that you are meant to go. That's why Kafka continued to write when his works were poorly received, why he persisted even though he believed that his writings had no real value. He didn't have to write. Kafka, in fact, had a full-time job. But he chose to regardless. This internal call to action is why people create without any hopes of return. However, morals have shifted. People can get recognition easily instead of toiling for something that isn't guaranteed. Going viral is easier now than ever due to social media and the rise of the entertainment industry. You don't need to be filled with agony deciding if your work is up to par. Film a video, hit post, and hope for the best. It seems lucrative to create something in the modern day. It's not only more effort, it could have less results in your lifetime. And if we're all going to be forgotten anyways, why not get fame? Why not live it up? Of course, this is only one way of thinking. Yet it has increased in prominence and is significant to recognize in our culture. A lot of people try to be great, but there are many, many more who, upon realizing that their lives will be effectively erased from human memory, decide that quick fame is easier. To put it into words, people have gone from wanting to be remembered for creation to wanting to be known while they're alive. This brings about two problems. The first is that many people will focus on material things, such as wealth and fame, which is linked to short-term success. This can lead to many problems with fulfillment, as people tend to desire a connection with something greater, which monetary possessions don't necessarily fulfill. The second issue more often goes unperceived. People get out of touch with their life path. Opportunities for fame and success are distracting and may block out the inner voice guiding people to true fulfillment. Thus, the chase for fame leads to discontentment, ultimately leading people to seek more external validation, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Given the question, do we value fame over our legacy? This reasoning points to yes. However, it's important to note that I am not speaking for everyone. I'm only identifying a way of thinking common in the 21st century. Yet, inherent in this is the fear of being forgotten. People chase fame to subdue this fear, but what exactly does it mean? To understand how the fear of being forgotten guides our choices, we need to observe past and present conjecture on this topic. For one, Marcus Aurelius, incredible philosopher and the author of Meditations, argues that the desire to be remembered is futile. In the end, everybody is forgotten. But what does this signify?
My fear of being forgotten stems from the worry that everything I've done could be entirely meaningless. I fear that people will only remember the worst of me, so I strive to be the best version of myself possible. I want to make a lasting impact on the lives of other people and ensure no one feels forgotten, because I know how painful that can be. Being forgotten is an emotional pain that feels physical.
It is evident that the fear of being forgotten is disheartening for many. Yet, if we fall back on Aurelius's teachings, being forgotten is motivation for focusing on virtue and living in accordance with nature, since there is nothing to truly be gained from seeking popularity. If it's impossible to be immortalized through memory, we should take it upon ourselves to improve our mindsets and live for fulfillment rather than for external validation. Likewise, philosopher Martin Heidegger talks about being toward death, meaning that when we are aware of our morality, we are compelled to live authentically.
I believe that you shouldn't base your life off of what you want to be remembered by or the fear of being forgotten, because once you pass, I feel like everyone would want to be remembered as their true selves. So I think you should live your life to the fullest and exactly how you want it. And you should let people remember you that way. If you're forgotten, then that's not your problem to solve. There's nothing you can do about it. You should just enjoy your life to the fullest, and that's all.
Aurelius and Heidegger were both able to identify a positive of being forgotten, in that when no one is watching you, you're compelled to live authentically and be true to yourself. This leads to a more freeing and fulfilling experience on earth. On another note, Ernest Becker writes in Denial of Death, of all things that move man, one of the principal ones is his terror of death. Although this may cause distress, this fear can actually motivate us to leave an impact, to create art and share ideas. To avoid being forgotten, we make things that we will be remembered for. Let's hear this next clip.
I want people to remember the good parts of me, the best parts, but I don't know if they will. Throughout my life, everyone has told me that I made them feel a different way, bad or good, and I don't want my legacy to be that. I want to leave something behind, something substantial, and I want people to know who I am.
Death is absolute. It is the end. It is your end. However, you can still exist in people's minds after death, even if it's indirectly. And you do this through work. The impact you make on people will span their lifetime, which seems to end subjectively shortly. But with art, products, and leadership, you can change the future for centuries to come. Everybody wants to be a Napoleon, recognized and even taught about, praised as a leader and a genius. Becker identifies this phenomenon as a fact of human nature. To escape the finality of death, we desire to live on through our work and mission. This is not exactly a negative, nor is it inherently positive. It is simply a truth, and you can do with it what you will, choosing to create instead of chasing success or monetary gain. Make something that you will be remembered for. On the other hand, being forgotten can work in the opposite way, deterring people rather than motivating them to be remembered. Elbert Hubbard, American writer and philosopher, finds that being remembered often leads to pressure on people's lives, something that can be demoralizing and incredibly destructive. He wrote, "The greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing you will make one." When you are living to be remembered, it leads to this pressure to do well and always be at your best. However, as Hubbard says, this leads to an unsatisfying life.
I don't think I really care about being forgotten. I think I fear being remembered more. Because if you're going to be remembered, then you have to do it right. And what's the fun in doing it all right?
Imagine this. You are remembered. In fact, everybody on earth knows you, and you will be known for generations to come. That is easily billions of people analyzing your every move, scrutinizing your actions, and offering their critique. And people make mistakes, mistakes that they don't want to be remembered for. That's why living and not being remembered holds so much freedom. You don't have to live thinking, how will people perceive me? Because at some point, you will cease to be perceived. And what freedom is this? It's the difference between living for yourself and living to satisfy millions of people that you will never meet. Living to be forgotten. What an interesting philosophy indeed. Living to be remembered, on the other hand, comes with a variety of complexities. This includes whether the motivation for being recognized stems from external validation or internal satisfaction. And it's important to note that even some of the brightest weren't satisfied. As mentioned prior, Franz Kafka died believing that he was a failure when his work would transform the literary world. It's not a given, but it's a challenge, a standard to hold ourselves to, something to guide us through life. It's imperative throughout all of this to maintain authenticity and live a life meaningful to you. You only get one and want to maximize your experience. Now, would this be better accomplished if you lived to be forgotten? Arguably, yes, because you'd be living for no one's standards but your own, or at the very least, only for the people who exist in your immediate circle. Anymore, and it seems to become incomprehensible. Do not take life too seriously. You will never get out of it alive. Elbert Hubbard. In the end, remember that it is best not to take too much stress about how you'll be perceived and live in a way that is meaningful to you. For me, I aim to live as authentically as possible while producing works that are true to myself. This is in hopes that somewhere, someday, someone will resonate with my thoughts, that I will be remembered, but for my ideas rather than a version of myself specifically curated for the eyes of others. To touch the hearts of people, to be significant to them, while remaining genuine in my being, is my ultimate goal in life. Living to be forgotten, creating to be remembered. I can only hope that my work will matter, and solely time will tell. Some people are afraid of being forgotten. Others have no desire to be remembered. But we are all modern philosophers, so I ask you, dear listener, where do you fall? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And a special thank you to all of my guest speakers who motivated me to do something a little unconventional, but something thoroughly unique and enjoyable. So, which philosophy do you most closely align with? Comment your thoughts on my Instagram and YouTube. If you enjoy this episode, please make sure to interact as it helps me out a lot. Until next time, keep living a life fulfilled.